Hi, this is Professor Charlie Evans, and this afternoon I want to talk a little bit about South Asian independence, which is one of the course units in History 1112 World Civ 2. And so right now we're looking at a map of South Asia before independence of the late 1940s. And one of the immediate things you see on the map is it's not a single political entity. Although the British controlled what they called India as part of their colonial empire, there was no single colony of India. It was the term or word India was mostly used to refer to like the geographical area of the subcontinent of South Asia. And so when you consider that suddenly you're going to create a single state out of this hodgepodge or conglomeration of individual states. And really the map is a little bit more complicated. This is only the larger political subdivisions in the region. It's going to be a problem. Now, there had been an independence movement for South Asian independence, for Indian independence, since, let's just say, since World War I, to make it simple. And the independence movement had been led by the Indian National Congress, of which the most important member was Gandhi. And you can read Gandhi for an alternative assignment for the course. And Gandhi's important weapons were weapons of civil disobedience and nonviolent protest, for which he was imprisoned numerous times, and his methods, which inspired numerous revolutionaries throughout the world later in the 20th century. But gradually through the 1920s and 1930s, the movement for an independent India gathered force within India, and then it was the costs of World War II which finally led the British to decide on making South Asia independent. Now, it's always struck me that the European countries, Britain, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, all raced to establish empires. That these empires would increase the wealth and power of the home country, the metropole. And so it's really interesting that suddenly after World War II, the empire was seen as a drain on the resources of the home country. In other words, even though India was an enormously rich area, enormous natural resources and wealth, the British felt that it was going to be more expensive for them to maintain India as part of the empire than it was going to be to allow India to become independent. Now, once the decision was really made to go the independence route, the next question was like, what kind of state are you going to set up? How do you set up a country? And let me scroll down, and so here's the simplified map of what was set up. And so basically, the subcontinent was divided into technically two pieces, but in reality, three pieces. And so you had India and Pakistan. And actually, you had Pakistan in two parts. You had Pakistan in the east and Pakistan in the west, with India right in the middle. Now, I don't know. It doesn't really take a rocket scientist to figure out that that's not going to work out. Having a country split in two with a much larger country in the middle. The rationale was a religious rationale, that the Muslims were going to have their own state, which was predominantly Muslim and which avowed allegiance to Islam, and that India was going to have a Hindu state. Despite the fact that Muslims and Hindus lived throughout the entire South Asian continent, subcontinent, I guess, suddenly you're going to divide them and by religious affiliation, and You're going to create countries based on religious affiliation, and you're going to have to move people to fit into their new countries because of their religious affiliation. It was just a gigantic recipe for disaster. And of course, it was a catastrophe, a human catastrophe. Once the partition was enacted, the countries became independent, and people raced to get from their homes into their new homes, and people died, and thousands of people died, and hundreds of thousands and millions of people were displaced. It was literally a human catastrophe. But that's what ended up in setting up the subcontinent. The other thing was that Gandhi, of course, died, was assassinated by a Hindu fanatic. Gandhi had opposed the partition of India, but then acceded to it to actually allow independence to take place and hoping to forestall violence. He wasn't really successful in that. But it had always been Gandhi's vision to create a single political state in the subcontinent, but that was something that did not come true. And so by the late 1940s, by 1949, you had independent countries on the subcontinent. You had Pakistan, India. You had the continual withdrawal, really, of Britain from world affairs as the British Empire began to break off chunks and create all independent countries throughout the world. And so the creation of Pakistan and India brought two new countries onto the world affairs, and two new countries that would play enormous and important roles in the non-aligned movement of the 1950s and 1960s. Okay, thank you.